and then embed it in the Gothic. But it's a very modern kind of Gothic. But I think the movie is not really dating. I mean, there's a degree of big hair and shoulder pads going on that tells us we're firmly in the 1980s, but Clive's genius particularly was with the Cenobites, and you can go and the Cenobites are absolutely timeless and will not date, will not age. You can go and look at the Cenobites in the movie in 50 years' time and we're all still here. If we make it past 2012.
Yeah, the actors don't age either. We're all timeless.
No, you'll have noticed that. We don't age at all. But the Cenobites will never date or age. And it's an ideas movie. It's a movie that gets under the skin, I think, particularly.
I think one of the things that struck me when I first watched Hellraiser, the first one, is that not only were the Cenobites very powerful individuals, but the lead character, Julia, female, was also very powerful. She was running around killing people for their skin to resurrect a dead lover. You gotta admire that kind of dedication. So, I think that, at least for the first two, the Julia character is also very powerful.
Yeah, I think actually Clive does say that Claire Higgins, without Claire Higgins, the film wouldn't be nearly as good. That her pitch, her performance was pitch perfect. I agree with that.
Absolutely. She nearly relegated me to being a fascinating footnote in the history of horror. I did her screen test. I played the victim with the weak bladder, so she could take a swipe at me with a hammer. And she came out of her dressing room with her eyes revolving in her head. I took one look at her and thought, there's no need to do this screen test. You're scaring me right now. So I delivered my line saying I needed a pee, that all my job was to drop out the frame so she could take a swing with the hammer into a block of foam that they taped to the side of the soundstage. So I duly did that and heard whack against the wall, and when I came up, it was a very long pause first before a voice said, "Cut." And I came up and everyone behind the camera was kind of going. And Clive said to me, she missed you by that much. She wasn't necessarily waiting for you were out of the way. So I might have been that little footnote. The role of Pinhead would have been played by and the role of Julia would have been played by Claire Higgins had she not been put in prison for manslaughter. She is brilliant in the film. But the film is a fortunate combination of a lot of things, I think. There's a lot of perfect casting, which is often as much accidental as anything else. Claire and Andy and Ashley, Andrew Robinson, Ashley Lawrence, all just perfect combination coming together, I think. Clive having Robin Vigil as his director of photography to work with, Bob Keane, and of course us. Just all coming together in a happy marriage, really.
And there's a lot of makeup on your characters for all three of you. What was that like the process to go through, and how did you kind of use that to get into your characters?
Nick and I, Chaka and I, had slightly different makeup to the two of you, in that our heads were waspy, which was skin tight inside, and we're forced down on top of our heads at kind of 5, 6 in the morning, and then super glued into place. And then we were basically blind, deaf and dumb for 12, 14 hours a day, sitting in our own little world of deprivation. It was a very, 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 very unpleasant experience, just kind of sitting in the dark for hours and hours and hours with your own thoughts, and then being taken to the set and not actually seeing the set or seeing the other actors, or just being told what to do, and you could just hear, because the makeup was so thick over the years, just hear what they were doing. So our experience was quite very, very unpleasant.
Nick and Simon have developed great entity with detainees at Guantanamo Bay. For me, it was initially, I think, because everybody was feeling their way with the makeup, it was a 5 or 6 hour process. And it's slightly trippy the first time you go through it. You're kind of zoned out by the time you come out the other side, which, to answer your point, is actually helpful in being in the right, horrible word, zone for the character. But also when I first got the makeup on, which was to screen test the makeup, I asked if everybody would leave the makeup room, spend 20 minutes maybe just staring in the mirror. And I probably found 95% of what I was doing with Pinhead, sitting in front of the mirror, just staring at his face and then trying to frown a bit or raise an eyebrow a bit and then try out a couple of lines, and I was getting quite excited by that time.
We did a similar thing, I remember with you, because I couldn't see what the makeup was doing in a mirror. So I remember sitting with Doug saying, okay, I'm going to try this inside the makeup and you can tell me what it looks like. So in the makeup I kind of raise an eyebrow or do like this, and he would say, okay, when you're ready, start. Okay, so I kind of do more with my face. By the end of the 20 minutes I was going, this inside the makeup, and he was going, when you're ready, you start. It didn't do anything. The makeup did not move.
What about you, Dolly?
Well, I am actually a kind of person who uses their face very animated, and so I found it a very restraining experience. And the only thing that was not covered with prosthetic makeup was, for the two of us, our lips, and of course the eyes. But I was told I was dead. That was the only direction I got from Tony Randall, is that my character was dead. So just look, as be as ominous as you can. But there was, I suppose you internalize as much as you can, but it's a very suffocating experience. So that does have a tendency to muffle you, and sort of worked out.
Barbie makes a good point, because you have to make friends with the makeup, and you have to be, you have to kind of fight the instinct to act, if that isn't a silly thing to say. The one note I got from Clive in the first couple of days of filming, particularly the first time we got in front of the camera, was he would say to me, that was great, just do less. So I'd take it down, he'd say, it's fantastic, it's really working well, just do less. Okay, take it down again. It really is fantastic, just do less. And he was kind of pushing me to a point which is quite difficult as an actor, which is to actually do nothing. To stand still with your face completely dead and deliver the lines through that makeup. What you're not aware of from inside your head is that, of course, from the outside, when that makeup is 20 feet high on a movie screen, it's working overtime for you and is actually, in a lot of ways, more powerful when you're not trying to impose any emotion on the makeup.
Actually, I was told that I shouldn't talk in between takes, which is, of course, impossible for me. Because they constantly, this is the bit where it was all glued, and if you moved or ate or anything, it would come away. And so we'd always have the makeup artist coming up with little bits of glue, surgical adhesive to put it back, because you didn't want to have that hard line there. So really, we just have to be completely minimal.
So again, if you'd like to ask questions, you can stick your hand up and ask them if you're not to ask anything about our panel. But one thing I'm back to Barbie, you actually wrote a book, I believe it was, or a short story, wasn't it?
Yes.
Sisters of Chalice, is that right?
No, it's called Sister Sleep.
Sisters of Sleep, sorry, I had to remind.
Oh no, it's Sister of Chalice, sounds good too. Part 2. Yeah, this is for Hellbound Heart, which is got a what do you call it when it's the end? Afterwards. But I'm so tired, I don't know what I'm saying. By Doug Bradley, intro by Clive. They were short stories by very well-known horror writers based on the Hellbound Heart, the novella Clive wrote that Hellraiser is based on. So we couldn't use the film. We had to use basically the short story as a basis. And rereading the story again, I was quite pleased to note that the lead Cenobite in the story was female. So I decided to write a backstory for a female Cenobite, not the female Cenobite.
Filthy. It's very, very rude. I recommend it.
You never think.
She has a very dirty mind.
Well, you know, you got that big wound in your throat. How did she get that? You know, so it's well, actually, it wasn't based on that though. But have to be very careful. But the stories are really interesting because it's spinning off on Clive's original thing, and all these different really great story writers like Pete Atkins, who wrote the script for Hellraiser 2 and 3, I believe. And 4. It featured Mark Morris, Sarah Pinborough, William Conrad, and Nico Vince, who played Chatter. They all contributed short stories, and it's an interesting book.
And you, Doug, I mean, when you first signed on to the project, did you ever even contemplate how many times you have to go through the makeup process and how many films it would spawn to you as Pinhead?
It was my first movie. I was being paid union minimum rates to do it. I'm playing a character with no name, covered in latex, on screen for barely 10 minutes. What did I have to get excited about? No. There were whispers about the sequel. About halfway through filming, I think, or towards the end of filming, that began to be.
Once the Russians went over to the States and New World Pictures saw the Russians, and the talk of sequel suddenly got a lot bigger. But it's a bit like being in, you're in a play in a pub theatre somewhere in West London, doing a fringe play, and somebody tells you that you might be transferring to the West End. You kind of hear it and forget it. But no, I mean, you get your head down and get the work done. You can't be thinking about franchises. All the big franchises all started out in the same place. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Friday the 13th, Hellraiser, Nightmare on Elm Street, to a greater or lesser extent. They all start out Halloween as movies made for not very much money, because someone made an act of faith in somebody's vision, and the franchise follows because you guys decide you like it, turn up at the theatre in droves to see the movies. No, I was not thinking, I think there'll be another 7 movies, and in 24 years' time I'll be sitting in Birmingham discussing the film. No.
And we've got time for one more question. So, is there anyone in the audience that would like to ask a question? Now is your chance. There we go.
Me.
Simon.
Simon, can you tell me your experience with Better Nightbreed?
Well, Nightbreed for me was an absolute joy. It was the first time I didn't have all this makeup on, so I could turn up at 8 in the morning and look at all the other poor sods who've been in there since 5 a.m. sitting in the makeup.
Like me, again.
So it was wonderful. It was great to see how a film was made, because I really haven't seen it on Hellraiser 1 or 2 because of the makeup. it was very exciting making Nightbreed because the book, Val, was such a fantastic book. The screenplay was even better, so there was a lot of excitement about Nightbreed becoming the new Star Wars. There was a lot of talk of it becoming huge. I don't know if you remember that, but and then suddenly it was. But that's
Well, thanks to Fox fucking with the film, basically, and trying to remake it in post, they completely screwed the film off, in my opinion.
But the budget of Nightbreed was huge as well. And the set at the time was they had the James Bond set, I think.
Huge, fantastic,
huge,
wonderful.
Yeah. So the whole experience was exceptionally exciting. And working with David Cronenberg as well, who was just a gentleman.
Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of our panel here at Hellraiser. So if you'd like to go see them, we'll be signing over at the table as well. So if you can miss a massive round of applause for our Hellraiser family, our Simon Band, Doug Bradley and Bobby Moore, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.